And here we pick up with part 2 of Devil in a Blu-Ray.
What do you know about 2 certified bankers? PhantasmaCast.
One thing that we really wanted to do with this episode, we traditionally talk about, we watch the special features and everything, but we have yet to go through and actually do like the audio commentaries, right? And we joked that this would kind of keep us true, and we would, go through and truly do all the special features, including the audio commentaries. And so we divided them up. I watched the commentary for One False Move. Derek got Devil in a Blue Dress. And, just wanted to go over a couple of the, really cool things that we learned that we otherwise would not have known had we not listened to them.
And we watched the commentary tracks separately. So anything Jake has learned from One False Move, I'll be learning for the first time. And I can't wait to hear that. And anything from Devil in a Blue Dress, I can't wait to share all that with you.
So I'll start with One False Move.
Do it.
So one of the first things that Carl Franklin talks about, so the commentary track only has Carl Franklin in it, which is fine. I would have hoped that there would have been a Billy Bob track as well, but Carl Franklin's a well-spoken guy, so learned a lot of great stuff from him. But the first one, he talks about that opening scene where it's that drug hit, right?
Yeah,
and I thought it was great, especially in the context of this conversation, because he says that he shot that scene in mostly close-ups and mediums because he wanted to cut it a lot and make it choppy to elevate that chaotic feeling. And I thought that was great because when we talked about Death Becomes Her and how Robert Zemeckis didn't want to do that.
Didn't want to impose editing.
Exactly. Yeah. But like that's still the way Carl Franklin did this scene. That still works. And I think it proves that, there's no one way of shooting a scene that's better than the other, right? It's all about what you want to convey about the scene and the characters at that moment.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really good kind of film school moment there.
Yeah. That's cool too, because it's like he had an idea of where he wanted it to go.
Yeah.
And then the movie had its own plans for how it unfolded in a better way.
And, in contradiction to that, right, he opts to shoot as much of the violence in the movie as he could in wides.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And this is something he would go on to say over and over again throughout the commentary, but he wanted to preserve the sanctity of human life, right? He didn't want to stylize the violence. He wanted it to play out as it would in real life. Kind of let that emptiness of a killing exist in the space of the moment.
Yeah. God, he's pretty poetic.
He absolutely listen to a Carl Franklin commentary track once in a while, guys, because you kind of get lost in like his descriptions of things. It's great.
I was like, I need to read more books after I was done listening to him. And this is something he would take later in the movie too, right? There's that scene that's the cover of the movie is when the cop, the Texas cop, I think,
Texas pulls them over, and it's a very tense moment, and Fantasia shoots the cop in the head. So the way that's cut is, it's on the cop. You see Fantasia get out, and he goes, "Ma'am, I thought I told you to stay in the car." And then she fucking blows him away. And right after she pulls the trigger, it cuts to a wide from like basically across the street, and you see the cop fall over dead, and just like the stillness of like a dead person, you know, falling to the ground, and then, you know, the kind of euphoria that especially Billy Bob feels because the cop got right.
Yeah.
So he tries to shoot as much of the violence and wides as possible, and I think it wasn't in the commentary, but it was in that one-on-one with Billy Bob. I think he says he shot it that way because that's how he had witnessed a shooting in real life. He wanted
that was heavy,
the audience to feel the kind of separation and the helplessness, you know, of witnessing that.
I think another thing he said was like, that's how most people are going to experience a shooting.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of hacks your brain a little bit, to kind of feel helpless and, you know, feel that kind of sense of loss of like a human life.
Yeah. It's not so much like in a medium or a close up being like, look how cool it was when she fucking...
It's anticlimactic is what it is.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's fun watching like the characters scramble, because she's like kind of like, what did I do? Ray's kind of like, you did it, baby, you killed that fucking pig.
Yeah.
And Pluto is kind of like, this is exactly what I said not to fucking do.
Right. And you know what's amazing about the scene directly after that was when they pile into the car and they start driving in the opposite direction. I didn't notice this the first time I watched it, but I noticed it again. That whole exchange between them in the car is in one take, in one shot.
Oh, cool.
It's like a 3-shot with Pluto driving. I think Ray is in the middle, and then Fantasia is at the end, and all three of them are processing what just happened differently, and they're all just kind of talking over each other. It's so it's a perfectly shot scene.
Yeah.
A fun fact about the sequence before that, of the right before they get pulled over, it cuts between them being followed by the cop, and they're like, oh shit, the cop's behind us and all that.
Yeah. Where Pluto's in the back?
Yes.
Okay.
A very famous cinematographer filmed the exterior shots of that car. Not really a car chase, but, you know, in effect it was.
Okay.
Janusz Kaminski.
No.
Yes.
Okay. Spielberg's guy.
Yeah.
Let's go.
All he did was he shot the shots of the cars following each other. I thought that was really cool.
That is cool.
I literally went, no fucking way when I heard it. The next thing is, and I'll keep this as direct a quote as I can, but Carl Franklin says, the film sat on the shelf for a year after they finished because IRS Media didn't have a distribution arm. So they had no distribution set up for the movie. So the eventual release of the movie is actually credited to the film's producer, Jesse Beaton, who got it into festivals. The idea was that if you could, you know, get into these prestige festivals, you could have the, you know, 5 or so top critics in the country, because that's how many there were back then, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think in the one-on-one interview that we watched, he was just like, yeah, you can count them, and as long as you got them on your cover.
Exactly.
Like, that's it.
Yeah. So that was their plan. They were like, if we know that this movie's good, so if we can get critics talking about it, we can put their blurbs on the front covers of the VHS tapes. And the promise of that that sale got the movie a theatrical release. And I think that's super cool for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, no, that is cool.
So
because up until that point, it was dead. It was a movie that got shelved. A great movie that was just sitting on the shelf.
They didn't know how to sell it.
Yeah.
So it's cool because, there was a time not long ago. It's crazy that we've kind of gotten away from this, but distributors saw a film's theatrical release as almost a preview for the physical release, right? Because you could make more money off of a physical release than a theater ticket, right?
Yeah.
You got to think back then, and this is the early 90s, so it was probably cheaper, but like especially in the 80s, like VHS tapes cost like over $100 a unit.
That's wild. That's wild.
So, and that's all money that the distributor is raking in, right? So they knew that if they had built it into their model, right, that if we could get the promise that this movie's going to be rented a lot or bought a lot, then we can guarantee that it's going to be a hit. And I think that's just really cool because this is a podcast that champions physical releases. And here we have a film that would not have seen the light of day if not for the revenue promise that was video releasing.
Yeah.
And if you take a step back from that, try and figure out how many independent films were able to be made back then because of the existence of a healthy rental market. It's just kind of crazy to me to realize the kinds of films that we get to see are dictated by the ebbs and flows of the industry.
That is really cool. And without that, this movie, One False Move, could have also been like his other 3 Roger Corman features, Lost to Time.
Mm-hmm. And all that is thanks to the quick thinking of producer Jesse Beaton. Speaking of, there's a really sweet moment in the commentary where he refers to her as his producing partner. His emphasis on that word piqued my curiosity. So
that's the poet in him, my
yes.
producing partner.
There was absolutely an emphasis on it, and I looked it up, and sure enough, they got married in 2000, a whole 9 years after they had made their first movie together.
That's so sweet.
We love to see romance through collaboration.
Absolutely.
Another cool thing is Beaton makes cameos in all of their films. Apparently, I've only seen 2 of them, but in this one, the cameo, she's the store clerk. There's a scene that precedes the scene where they kill the cop, where they're in a store, a convenience store, and the cop comes in, and then Billy Bob, he's just fucking chowing down on a hot dog. He's just a disgusting person.
Yeah.
And the cop comes in and he starts, getting the itch to reach for his gun, they leave, and the cops, he's still kind of following them out, and we think that the cop is suspicious of them, right?
Yeah.
And the store clerk goes, "She's too young for you, Bill," referring to Fantasia. And he says something like, "I like 'em young."
Normal.
Yeah.
But that was her cameo as the store clerk.
Yes.
Okay. That's cool though. I love that for them.
We talked about this before, but one of the most interesting revelations, although it wouldn't be a revelation if I were a better film observer, and this about me, but Carl Franklin talks about the non-traditional structure of the story, right? So unlike a traditional structure, you would have the crime takes place, and then the detectives spend the whole movie trying to chase down and catch the killers.
Yeah, their emphasis on a chase.
Yes. But in this one, the cops know exactly where they're going, right? So they're lying in wait. So it's not like a traditional movie where like your protagonist, presumably Bill Paxton, would be driving the story along, right?
I gotta get these fuckers.
Yeah, they're very kind of passive, and in that, the plot doesn't get away of the character development, right? Because there's a whole lot of fucking character development going on in the movie.
Yeah.
So to kind of keep the tension going throughout the film, you have this tense relationship between the three criminals, Ray, Fantasia, and Pluto. Ray, because she let the kid live in the first house, right? He's suspicious of Fantasia. Fantasia's afraid of both Ray and Pluto, and then Pluto is just a cold, calculating psychopath. So in addition to the anticipation of this coming showdown, you're kind of a little worried about what's going to happen between the three killers. And I think that's a mark of a great storyteller, because, you know, he kind of somehow hacks your brain into feeling sympathy for them, for at least for Fantasia, right?
Yeah.
And you know, Carl Franklin talks about in the scene, going back to that scene in the hotel room when Billy Bob's eating the chicken, right? He says that he shot that scene from Fantasia's perspective because he knew in the story he needed the audience to start kind of getting on her side a little bit, to start feeling the danger that she's in.
Okay. I can see that. Yeah, absolutely. And because if we didn't have that early on, I think we would have been like, why is she here? What is she up to?
Right.
But if we're with her in that moment, we know she's hiding something, or is just, she's playing an angle that we're not aware of.
Absolutely playing an angle. Yeah. But I just thought that was a really interesting, like, directing note, right? Of kind of deciding, okay, this scene is going to be from this character's perspective because I want to say something, not necessarily to move the plot along, right? But I want to say something about where that character is in the story right now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting to have like perspectives in a scene with multiple characters and just be able to be like, decisively be like, this is from her perspective.
Speaking of Carl being a poet, he says, and this is just a great line. He says that ultimately One False Move is about how in the harvest of our success is usually the seed of our destruction.
God, he's so cool. He's so cool.
So aside from that being an absolute fucking banger of a quote, it's a great summation of the film being about the characters' motivations and their hubris, right?
Yeah.
Fantasia moves away from her hick town to live in LA, only to fall in with, you know, these fucking killers, right? And then she has to go on the run back to the safety of her hick town, right? So she was trying to do something with her life. She tried to make this big grand gesture, and then it fucking fell flat, right? And she has to kind of come home to lick her wounds, right? Dale Dixon, the Hurricane, he's a hotshot, right? He aspires to be this LA detective, like the ones he sees on TV. And he sees this bust as his ticket to the big leagues.
Yeah.
And at one point he asks one of the LA detectives for like a recommendation, which, you know, they laugh him off basically.
Oh yeah. That scene was hard to watch too. Cause we don't know the dark side of him yet. So he's like, listen, I'm a good cop down here. Haven't fired my gun in 6-7 years, whatever. I know everyone here. Really appreciate you boys being out here and getting me in on the bust. You know, this one's going to be the big time. And I'm just wondering how I could get up and, you know, possibly I think he's like packing a bag. Like he's going to be like, and then we'll all go back to LA after this is all over. And you'll be like, hey, other LA cops, welcome the Hurricane. And then, he just walks in on them because they get to the diner before him one time. And he just overhears them being like, "Oh, that dumb."
They're just ripping him a fucking apart.
Oh man, that's devastating.
Speaking of motivations, you know, Ray and Pluto, obviously they're driven by greed, you know, and that doesn't end well for them. But all of the characters' ambitions and actions, right, lead them to this final confrontation that ultimately spells their ends, right? A quick note on that final scene, though, and this is why I think I love Carl Franklin films now. But in that last scene, Carl Franklin says he wanted everyone to make mistakes.
Cool.
And so, what happens in the final scene, it's very quick. Basically, the Hurricane is waiting out with Fantasia, waiting for Ray and Pluto to come. And he hides in the house and waits for them to come in, and he pulls his gun. Police, because he wants that glory, right? Of getting his collar,
Yeah.
And he fucks up. He drops his guard. One false move.
See what you did there.
Right? Gets stabbed. He shoots Pluto. Ray runs away. He's shooting blindly behind him. Hits Fantasia in the head. She fucking dies. And the Hurricane shoots Ray in the ass. Right? So it's you talk about this scene wanting everyone to make mistakes. Like, absolutely, right? Like, how much more terribly could that have played out? And I think that's what I love. Like, when I think of like my own kind of filmmaking style, right? I do love when like characters who make mistakes, and just the reality and like the weight of a moment, especially a big moment like that, just, instead of performing, everything falls apart and you make all the wrong decisions.
Yeah.
And nothing works out right.
You're just blindsided, and the chips fall where they may.
Right. So again, very humanist, realist, filmmaker. And going back to his original quote, right? The Hurricane wanted good things to happen for him from this bus. That was the thing that motivated him. Mm-hmm. One of the things. And it all just kind of fell apart. And, that just kind of, the harvest of our success is usually the seed of our destruction.
Absolutely.
So yeah, those are the things that I got from the commentary that I thought were really cool.
Yeah, that was all beautiful. That was all beautiful.
How about Devil in a Blue Dress? What did you find out?
How about it, indeed? Yeah. So, just some context. I watched the director's commentary track on the Twilight Time release of Devil in a Blue Dress, which you can't buy anymore, or at least like you can't buy any new copies of it because it's out of print. So that's an interesting little nugget.
It's not defunct, but I think like the Twilight Time library got bought out by another company. So
yeah,
the label still exists, but I don't know if they're like acquiring new films.
Right. Yeah. But you can pick up Devil in a Blue Dress on the Criterion, which I saw there was a 4K of that.
Yes. So if you're looking for an easy in, Criterion 4K,
go check that out. And I'm sure it'll have this commentary track with it as well. Let's just dive right into it. So, speaking to the poetic nature of Carl Franklin, one quote that I wanted to single out here was he was on the subject of adapting the book Devil in a Blue Dress into this film. He says, for literature, the conflict is within characters, whereas in film, the conflict is between characters. Mm-hmm. So it's not just about like, this thing happened in the book, so it has to happen in the movie. He's like, if it is a conflict within a character, you can't visually pull that off.
Right. It doesn't
play. It doesn't play. It has to be between characters. So you have to rework a lot of things. You have to maybe combine some characters, get rid of some characters who just like in a novel that would work. But is there any conflict between them? Then no, we don't have time for that kind of thing.
What a fun job it would be to adapt a book.
Yeah, probably a pain in the ass. But if you pull it off as well as Carl Franklin,
Yeah.
fun. Yes. So we'll jump from a very fun quote to like one of the saddest quotes from the commentary. It says, he describes his intentions behind the tone of the like ending sequence of the movie as a setup for, quote, the subsequent films we hope to make. Oh, devastating. I was devastated when I heard that, because I know when we were watching it, I was like, I can't wait to see more Easy Rollins pictures. What? They never got made?
As soon as the movie ended, I remember looking it up and I go, oh, this was based on a book. Oh, there's like 15 of these fucking Easy Rollins books. Why aren't there more?
Surely easy money. Easy money. You see what I did there?
I try not to read Wikipedia pages. I want to get as much of my information from the Blu-rays as possible.
Right.
But I did peek at the Wikipedia page for Devil in a Blue Dress. And the one thing that I did catch was Denzel and Carl Franklin were ready to do a trilogy of these movies. It just never happened.
God. Because we're not allowed to have cool, awesome.
How fucking great would that have been to have 2 more of these fucking movies?
Yeah. Oh, another nugget I learned from the commentary is they initially wanted to do the second book in the series first.
Yeah.
But then eventually landed on Devil in the Blue Dress.
Which I think is great, because there's by the end of the movie he is a private detective, or at least he says he's thinking about being a private detective, and I love that the story of him going from his past life and being pulled into this and going, you know what, I think I can do this.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
it's a very novel, unique, noir story to be told. Speaking back to like adaptations and what things had to be different, there's this character known as the Woodcutter, which is
that fucking guy that keeps trying to chop down his trees.
Yes, that's the Woodcutter. Which as you were just saying, we were like, what the fuck's up with this guy? Yeah. Like, what's his deal? Because he's just like kind of treating him as like the like stray dog in the neighborhood. Would be like, get. Like, what are you doing in my yard? Kind of thing. And the guy's like, all right, cool, and fucks off. So he was not featured in the original novel, but was just an edition of Carl Franklin's. And at the end of the movie, Franklin comes back to this character when Easy yet again like chases the Woodcutter away from like a neighbor's yard, and like while a voiceover is playing, being like, all right, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. I was thinking about setting up a detective agency or whatever. So him and his neighbor like share a knowing look at each other, like, oh, that's that guy. And then they like smile and chit chat for a moment. And I think that's kind of like Franklin's point about that moment, or like that character, is that he's somewhat of a pest, like a common nuisance in the neighborhood. But, and this is a direct quote actually, if anything had happened to that man, everybody would have been upset.
I agree. 100%.
Do you see that? Do you see that? Yeah. And I love that. And a very interesting thing to me is that when he said that, that's the first time it clicked in my mind. Was like, I've seen this character before, actually.
Okay.
And it reminded me of this character Ezal from Friday. Ezal, yeah.
Yes.
Which also came out in 1995.
Oh wow!
So it was a real big moment for like the common like neighborhood pests.
Yeah.
That no one wants to harm, but like if someone fucks with that guy, everybody's gonna be upset.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like a homeless guy, right, in the neighborhood. And
I think it's like implied that he's like a crackhead or something of some sort like that. Mm-hmm. But it's
what a novel. He's just homeless.
But yeah, he's just looking for a quick buck for stuff. He's like, can I just like
always trying to get into people's shit.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay. Circling back to something, and I'm so glad you singled this out as like one of your favorite scenes with Coretta, because when we get to that scene in the commentary, Franklin describes, and the actress's name is Lisa Nicole Carson. He describes her as sizzling hot.
He's not lying.
He's not wrong. I just wrote he is correct in my notes. He's like, yep. And here we have Coretta, played by Lisa Nicole Carson. Lisa Nicole Carson, sizzling hot.
Not only
Like,
is
it's
she
its own
gorgeous, not only is she gorgeous, but like she has a very seductive quality to her, right?
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what she was in the movie for, right? But
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
fucking, she did the job, man.
I think he also said that there was no one else.
Yeah.
When she auditioned, like, that's her.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they nailed it. Speaking of more like casting decisions, which I took notes on these because they were fascinating stories. Jennifer Beals, who plays Daphne.
Yeah.
There was a big concern about casting her because they thought that casting a woman who was part African American might spoil the third act reveal about Daphne, who was constantly being referred to as the white woman.
Yeah.
That Easy was searching for.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because she, a lot like Fantasia in One False Move.
Yes.
Her parents, one of her parents was black and one was white, right? And
Exactly.
it was a point of, I think the more important side of that, it's a point of kind of contention or like embarrassment, like a story, like a family story you'd rather not tell.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Exactly.
And then especially for Daphne's position, she's cozied up to politicians. She's gonna marry this rich guy, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was her thing, right? Like she didn't want that to come out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other politician in the race knew about that and was going to leverage that to like basically force the other guy to quit.
Right.
Because this was 1948.
Setting,
determining character. So I thought that was a little interesting nugget about that casting. And then what else did I write? During what I want to call the I'm looking for Frank Green montage, there is a scene that takes place on the second floor of this jazz club. And it starts with a man escorting a woman to her seat. She's dressed in black and with a bit of leopard print and is called Miss Ramona by the host.
Okay.
This woman is Jessie Beaton.
No, that's her cameo?
Producing partner and eventual partner in life to Carl Franklin.
Producing partner.
So he says of her appearance in this film as, quote, she was always Ramona, always in leopard.
He fucking loves that woman.
Yes, he does.
We love them.
I'm crying. I'm getting all verklempt. Okay, casting. Oh, yes. And then on to Don Cheadle. Don Cheadle was like Bill Paxton in One False Move, not the first choice to play Mouse. Even though him and Franklin had previously worked together on Punk, the studio was putting a lot of pressure in the form of wanting to cast bigger names like Spike Lee or Samuel L. Jackson, because this is, the mid-90s, right?
I can though absolutely like see Sam Jackson in this role.
Yeah.
But he'd go too hard. He'd go too serious.
Yeah, I would almost not believe him and Denzel's friendship. Because I feel like Samuel Jackson would be more in control. But I think Don Cheadle brings that energy, but not the what's the word? Like the hierarchy. Like he's the muscle, not the guy also calling the shots.
Right. They would compete on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah. And then this kind of ties into my other favorite scene from the movie is where Mouse is drunk. Mm-hmm. Where he's pulling a gun out. But that scene was intense. So this time the gun isn't pulled out for comedic effect.
This is after they get that guy drunk so that they can look for the Bible.
Yeah.
Right.
Dupree, Coretta's
yeah.
man. Which another little nugget, that Dupree character, the actor who plays him, every time he played that scene where he cries, even in the audition, that was a real cry, real tears every time he did it.
Oh, wow.
I was like, damn, all right.
Yeah.
Guy's got chops. But yeah, so during the drunk mouse scene, this scene was almost on the chopping block entirely because it, quote, wasn't moving the story forward and it didn't add anything to the movie.
Oh, fuck off.
Yeah. Are you not angry? Are you not angry at that? I think I paused the commentary and said, fuck off. And then I wrote it down. So
I think you're right. Like, I remember feeling very uneasy in that scene because Don Cheadle does such a good job of selling himself as a loose cannon.
Yeah.
And I was legitimately worried he would pop off again, you know? And this time he's drunk, and so he'd be even more unrestrained.
Yeah.
So, this is a fucking effective scene.
Yeah. And Franklin feels the way you do, and I do. And he says, quote, it was the centerpiece about this scene. It was the centerpiece of who Mouse was. It was emblematic of Easy and Mouse's relationship in a lot of ways. And then later on saying it was about showing just a glimpse of how someone like Easy could find a way to be friends with a rattlesnake, is how he puts it. The poet.
He's too good.
He's too good.
He's too
good. How could you be in an editing room with this man and be like, yeah, this scene's about how Easy can be friends with a rattlesnake, and then go, yeah, but it doesn't move the story forward. Cut it.
Maybe it's because he said that they kept it.
They're like,
they were in awe of how he can fucking work with words.
Yeah. I never thought about it like that, Mr. Franklin. You're like, you barely ever think at all. Just shoos him out of the room.
He's like, I ever tell you the time? I ever tell you about how the seeds of your destruction are usually...
What do you know about the seeds of destruction? That's awesome. But yeah, and I think he ends that his glimpse into that behind the scenes to say that he wanted to include a scene that showed the less attractive side of a guy like Mouse. Mm-hmm. So people aren't like, man, this Mouse guy is so cool. Like, no, he's just about to shoot his best friend on a whim.
Yeah.
And some more things I was jotting down. So we're going to rewind it a bit to the very beginning of the movie. The opening shot of the movie is a painting that was created during the exact year that the film takes place, 1948.
Oh, cool.
That roaming shot of the finer details of the painting ends on a woman in a blue dress. Franklin says that they included that as a cheeky nod and weren't sure whether anyone would pick up on it.
I think that's great.
And he was right, because I was like, oh, really? It does? I was like, well, I'll be damned. And then we'll skip to the end, and I'll hit you with one of these, Jake, before I go into it. What do you know about shoo-ins?
Not a goddamn thing.
Yeah, me neither. I was like, I actually, when I sat down to think about it, I was like, yeah, what the fuck does a shoo-in mean? Like, where did that come from? Turns out it's a racing term, like a horse racing term, for like when like the race was rigged and they had like a shoo-in. They were just gonna shoo the winner into first place to get it over with.
Oh, okay. So that referring to the term when someone's a shoo-in for something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So they were like, shoo, you get out of here. Go ahead and just win. We already know you're the determined winner in this rigged race. A shoo-in. So at the end of the movie, there's a newspaper prop that like recounts like the election like subplot that's going on.
Yeah.
And it says shoo-in, SHOE-NIN. Okay. Where it should be SHOO-IN. And he's like, yeah, there's a typo there. We didn't think anybody would notice it, but like maybe we were hoping that like eagle-eyed viewers would like read into it more and be like, what do they mean by shoe? But no, it's just a typo.
Oh, okay. I mean, I would think that it would be spelled SHOE.
Anyways. Yeah. Like, so like I didn't even like pick that up the first time. But yeah, it's more like shoe, like get out of here, rather than foot shoe. More things that like just random behind the scenes stuff. Franklin was worried that Denzel would get addicted to smoking cigarettes. after learning that Denzel doesn't normally smoke, but, quote, inhaled for this project. This project was important enough for him to be like, yeah, I'll inhale.
He smoked a hell of a lot of unfiltered cigarettes in that movie.
Yeah. And he kept on smoking until 5 a.m. So if you recall the scene where Easy comes home and walks through some doorways to like pick up a phone from his bedroom, he like, it's like the camera's behind him, and then like the camera stays in the living room as he like crosses these thresholds and then like walks off camera. And we never see where he goes. Franklin says he likes to shoot characters walking through door frames or thresholds and then having them walk out of frame because it enhances the mystery of film. It sparks the viewer's imaginations, like when characters disappear. Poet. He's right, because I'm like, yo, what is he getting up to back there? Like,
right.
I imagine him like also just like grabbing a gun, tucking it into his jeans, like he's ready for something. But yeah, he's right. It just like, it's kind of boring if you see everyone's like every waking motion. You're like, okay, I see him doing the thing. So it's nice to just like get a little bit of a tease of like, what is he doing around the corner?
There's a cinematic kind of movement to it. He does. That actually reminds me. There's a scene towards the end of One False Move where Bill Paxton's waiting in that house with Fantasia, and they're having this fight about how why won't you just admit it and say that that's your son, the little boy. And she marches off and she goes, and he's like, where are you going? And she's like, I'm getting some cigarettes. And he's like, here, take some of mine. And she's like, I don't smoke those. But like, as they're moving from one room to another, they're walking into the room where her purse is, where she's going to get a cigarette. And we follow them from the perspective of like further back in the house.
Yeah.
So the camera still follows them as if they're on frame, but they're hidden behind a wall. Right.
I remember that shot. Yeah.
And it's a dolly shot, and then they come into frame, and then they're perfectly framed by a door frame.
Yeah.
When she finally reaches her purse, and then he races in front of her to grab her purse and finds a little gun in there.
Yep.
And he's like, were you going to shoot me? And she's like,
yeah. She's like, I don't even know how that works.
Yeah, exactly.
I forgot that I was in there.
No, yeah. That's, he's always fucking thinking of what a shot means, and obviously a director should do that, but it's great to kind of see his thought processes.
Yeah, because he definitely puts a lot of thought into it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of thought. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because this ties into the last little things that I picked up from the commentary of Devil in a Blue Dress, the final shootout at the cabin. Two very interesting things. The first, the moment where one of Albright's goons is stumbling out of the cabin after being shot in the neck. Remember that one?
Yeah.
And he like wanders partly into the surrounding trees and then just collapses and dies.
Yeah.
That was inspired by a shooting that Franklin witnessed where a man was dead 2 blocks away from where he was first seen pulling out a gun after being shot in the head 6 times.
Jesus.
So imagine a guy getting shot in the head, not once, but 6 fucking times, going, let me get my gun and get some get some revenge on this. And then somehow
over dead 6 blocks away.
Yeah, somehow stumbling
Yeah.
a few blocks away and just dying there. So I was like, wow, okay.
Talk about another scene where, everyone makes mistakes. It's not a clean shootout, a lot of people get fucked up, but in a very kind of accidental way. It's like no one's a good shot in that scene,
Yeah. Well, until Mouse shows up.
Yeah.
And it just blows a hole right in Albright, right in the chest, which leads to the second thing. So the moment where Easy and Mouse are just watching Albright crawl towards his car, and he's like,
yeah,
giving those last gasps of life. So Franklin says that all the sounds of nature fade away while this is happening. And then we just hear this gasping. And it was such a metal moment when I was watching it, because I was just like, yeah, they're just going to watch him die.
They're just going to watch him fucking go.
Yeah. They don't look at each other. They look at him very like somberly, just witness him die. And then the scene, like the sounds of nature finally come back.
Yeah.
After Albright dies. And Franklin says he used this same device in One False Move. Mm-hmm. After all the killers are dead, the sounds come back.
Yeah.
Sounds of nature come back. And to him, he sees it as a scene where, quote, nature stops to observe the passing of one of its own.
How many more of these profound fucking quotes do you have from this man? Because damn.
That is it. That was the coolest. That's the one I wanted to end on. And I think it ties in nicely to your, like, the harvest of our success.
Yeah.
You know, nature stops to observe the passing of one of its own. The poet, Carl Franklin.
One False Move. Devil in a Blue Dress.
One damn good movie. And I don't have a pun for Devil in a Blue Dress.
I think the biggest thing for me, you know, watching these two movies back to back, putting them together, comparing them, seeing what the director had to say about them, my key takeaway is I'm a Franklin fan now. He is a filmmaker with an impressive body of work. He's made some really good movies that I don't know if it's because I don't know what I'm talking about, or if I've been under a rock, or if people just generally don't talk about Carl Franklin, but like, fuck, man. Where has the Carl Franklin love been this whole time?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. What did Jessie Beaton know? And why isn't she just shouting from the rooftop, Carl Franklin exists. Let's make more movies with him.
They're like, ma'am, you need to go. But no, this is kind of special to me because, you know, we discovered a filmmaker that we both like together, watched his movies back to back for the first time, learned a lot about him, have a lot of respect for him as a filmmaker. And like, I think at one point when we were talking about making this episode, I was like, oh yeah, okay, and then how about we watch the rest of his movies, and then that way we can talk more about it. And then you're like, Jake, calm down. But no, yeah, I'm definitely now that, you know, this episode's in the can, I'm gonna go out and watch some more Carl Franklin movies, and you guys should too.
And that does it for this episode of PhantasmaCast. We had a blast talking about One False Move and Devil in a Blue Dress. For our next episode, we'll be talking about Polyester and Hairspray, two John Waters movies.
We assure you, it'll be divine.